Your garden doesn't have to look sad or lifeless in the winter. With just a few intentional choices, you can create something that feels vibrant, textured, and full of interest, even when everything is dormant. When you're planning your garden, it's really important to think through all 12 months of the year. Take pictures as often as you can, at least every season. This way, you can see how your garden evolves and remember what needs improvement the next time you're at the garden center, especially during this time of year when you can't just run out and buy new plants. Welcome back to Gardens by Monica, where I share approachable, garden-inspired design ideas to help you create beautiful spaces year-round. In today's video, I'm sharing with you 8 garden design tips to make your winter garden look beautiful all season long. These small tweaks really do make a huge impact. I'll be honest, there are areas in my garden that need a little extra winter interest and attention, and I'm constantly updating and improving, and that's just part of the process. Before the video, I Googled some inspirational photos that I want to share. Look how beautiful and inviting these winter garden spaces can be, even in the middle of the coldest months. They feel calm, structured, peaceful, and full of personality. And here's what makes them work: the strong evergreen structure, the thoughtful shapes and silhouettes, a clear focal point, and layers of texture. Even in the winter, these elements make a space feel intentional and alive. The best part, you can recreate these principles right at home. So let's grab our coffee and jump into tip number 1. All right, so tip number 1, we have choose plants for structure, bark interest, and form. So what does that mean? For the other 3 seasons of the year, you are heavily relying on your leaf texture or your leaf shape and color or your flowers to really add that interest to the garden. While as your perennials die back and your trees and shrubs defoliate, you lose a lot of that form unless you have mostly evergreens in your garden, and that doesn't always help you in the other months of the year. So what you really want to look at is interest provided through the structural form under the leaf canopy. So that can be through intricate branch design or through bark interest. For me, one of my favorite branch structural plants is the Henry Ladder walking stick. It's very funky looking and adds a lot of great texture into your garden. I have a couple of them in mine. They don't look great or anything special during the other months of the year, but they really do provide a lot of interest during the winter season. In terms of bark interest, there are a lot of different options out there. One of my favorite that I actually just planted this spring is a Temple of Bloom 7 sunflower, or the Heptacodium. Outside of that, you can also think through things like your coral bark maple or your river birch trees, or even some red twig dogwood, yellow twig dogwood. Really bring that added interest into the garden. All right, tip number 2 is layering your evergreens for texture. And this can be thought of both in the garden as well as your winter containers. In fact, I'm going to be doing a winter container update later on this week, so stick around for that if you guys are interested. But you can also layer your evergreen interest in the garden. So for example, your arborvitae and your cedar, your spruce, your fir, your pine, they all have very different needle structure. So layering those on top of each other will add a lot of interest throughout your garden throughout the season. Tip number 3 is adding pops of color that shine in the winter. And this can be a little bit more challenging depending on the zone that you're in. But again, your red twig and yellow twig dogwood do pop up here because they add that color that is oftentimes lacking. Winterberry is another thing that can be added into your garden to provide winter interest. The interest here is provided from the red berries on the stems, but oftentimes wildlife like to eat those off fairly quickly, especially as the deer and such get hungrier throughout the season when there is less to eat. In terms of perennials, hellebores are a great option to add into your garden. They are evergreen and they are also hardy from zones 4 to 9. And they start really blooming around late February, early March for me. And those blooms can last all the way into September. They are a great addition to the garden. I love them. All right, tip number 4 is making sure that you have enough vertical interest, and that can be provided in a number of ways. It can be thought through things like trees and shrubs, or structures such as even bird feeders or bird houses on poles really add that vertical interest so your eye has different levels to look at as it's walking through the garden. Tip number 5 would be to spruce up your containers by using natural materials that you already have. And you can do this by using any pruning scraps that you have, any branches that you have lying around, pine cones, or anything like that, just to add a little bit more interest rather than just leaving your pot filled with dirt and looking sad and empty. All right, tip number 5 is utilizing evergreen ground covers. So ground covers such as pachysandra or creeping junipers, creeping thyme, ajuga, they all really help soften up the edges of the garden and provide added winter interest during those months when things are really looking bare and your mulch just isn't doing it. All right, so tip number 7 would be adding sculptures, garden art, and outdoor furnishings. So these really can become your strong form in the garden when your perennials have died back. A bench, a sculpture, an urn, a lantern, all these things give your eye somewhere to land. They create focal points and personality, which is what makes a winter garden feel intentional and not empty. All right, so now I know that things like benches and sculptures can sound really expensive, but it doesn't have to be a big investment. Just start with one thing, a simple bench, a thrifted urn that you spray painted, a lantern that's been sitting in the corner of your garage like I have, or one of my favorite places to search, which is Facebook Marketplace. One good focal point in the right spot can really change how your garden feels in the winter. All right, tip number 8, and I've talked about this before, is all about the lighting. So making sure that you are lighting key pieces intentionally. So for example, if you did go out and you did get a beautiful sculpture, make sure at night you're illuminating that sculpture. A little warm lighting makes everything look magical. So whether you're uplighting a beautiful tree or spotlighting a garden statue or even adding fairy lights onto your containers, the added glow really looks intentional. And there are many options out there that are not very cost prohibitive. So I'll make sure to link a few of my favorite solar lights down below in case you guys want to give those a try. All right, so here's a bonus tip that I thought of, and that would be attracting wildlife into your garden, which sometimes we grumble about, but a lot of times during this time of year, it's so exciting to walk out there and see something that you wouldn't normally see. Doing things like adding feeders, heated bird baths, or plants that hold berries through winter not only add movement and color into your garden, but they also bring in creatures such as cardinals or chickadees that really instantly make the entire space feel alive. So those are my 8 tips to creating a vibrant winter garden. If I missed anything or if you guys have anything to add, please add them in the comments below. And as always, if you like this sort of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Share with anybody else you think may also enjoy it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.